What's up, my fellow scruffy looking nerf herders, and welcome to the Carbonite Chat. Today I want to be talking about why I think Finn should be a Jedi. Now this kind of stems from a few days ago. I posted one or two videos while I was reviewing the Last Jedi novel and some of the treatment of Finn, very unfairly. Those videos are there. I don't want to get back too much on that topic. It's there. They don't treat him properly. But all in all, two things kind of got in my mind. One of them is a discussion a lot of people had, and I've kind of agreed with it from the very beginning, that the way his character is set up from the beginning, he has the most storytelling potential of really almost any character ever in Star Wars. I mean, we all know and love Stormtroopers, and now we have the potential of a Stormtrooper turning the first Stormtrooper we've ever known, really take off the helmet that we've had to deal with. Now we had the clone troopers. It's not quite the same. But now we've got an actual Stormtrooper taking off his helmet. And now I'm saying how much of an incredible journey this could be if he went from Stormtrooper to Master Jedi. I think that would be incredible storytelling, and it would be new and fresh. We've had the dark to the light, but this isn't really dark to the light. He's not a dark side character. He's not a bad guy. He's been brainwashed. He's been trained up as a soldier, and he's a stormtrooper. He's someone that, you want to talk about the gray area of that Disney's trying to play with now. You've got a character that is a good guy, but he's on the dark side. He's on the evil, the Second Empire side, because he's been kidnapped and brainwashed. So one of the, some of the things that they've looked for that you can pick out for Rey that they wanted from a Jedi was longing for a family. Well, he was taken from his family, so you got that set up. There's no lineage. As of right now, she's nobody from nothing. So he has no lineage either. And then connection to Kylo. Obviously, this one's different, but there's a connection, and I think it makes the story better. Because you want your dark side character, you want your bad guy to actually be a bad guy that wants to hurt the protagonist. Now, I do have a possible story as I've been trying to put together how would have been a good way to do this trilogy, this new sequel trilogy. And I think the best way actually would be to have Finn and Rey both be Jedis. But because Rey's got enough time as it is, and I'm trying to stick to one particular topic here on just Finn. But if you like some of the stuff I bring up here, and you would be interested in me trying to put together that whole trilogy, I might do that at another time. I will take time on it because I don't want it to be as bad as the actual trilogy we got now. But I did come up with a few ideas, and I thought, this would be interesting to put together. But for this, we're just going to focus on Finn and why he should be the case. Now, Finn is a stormtrooper. He defects because of killing. He sees the murder happening. He sees someone that he cares about being hurt, and he's like, I don't want a part of this. Now, I think what would be smart is to, when he tries to free Poe, they get away freely. They don't shoot. Now, they get away freely at first, but then they're shot down. They see, we got a random TIE flying away, shoot it down, because the First Order does it. Like, if someone's trying to randomly fly away without orders, they're breaking the rules anyway, shoot them down. But they get out of the hangar so that Finn doesn't have to shoot up a bunch of stormtroopers. Remember, he's defecting because a friend died. He's grown up with these people. He's been brainwashed, but he's still grown up with these people his whole life. He's got to like a good bit of them. He's not going to know who it is when he's just firing off bombs inside of a hangar. That doesn't fit the whole point that he left. There's motivations, and his motivation is ruined from that point on. But if you don't do that, and then later on they're trying to flee with him and Rey, and because they're trying to flee, he's not wanting to shoot, but she's having trouble being able to fly and get away, and she's like, look, you have to, she's yelling at him saying, you've got to shoot them, or we're going to die. And so then that's when he actually finally shoots down the TIE fighters. Now he does it. She can fly, but he can shoot the weapon without needing her, to actually position the weapon into the place so that he can just mash the button, because he's unable to do it on himself. This is a soldier. This is a trained warrior. The conflict is that he doesn't want to be a warrior. Now, if you're starting to piece this together a little bit, what's the Jedi? They're talented warriors, but they're peacekeepers and they don't want to fight. They're ultimately pacifists with the greatest fighting ability in the world. You see how this is beginning to set up that Finn is the perfect person to be the Jedi? Now, as this happens, this then begins to kind of collapse his character emotionally, where he's struggling throughout from this point on because he's actually killed another stormtrooper. He doesn't know if it's one of his friends. He doesn't know who was in that ship. And so when you get to the thing on Takodana, he's fighting and he's trying to get to Rey, or he's trying to defend himself, but he's not killing. He's one of the in one of the earlier like junior novels or something, it discusses how that he was one of the 1% in the First Order. That Phasma considered him to be one of the best warriors they had, so keep that in. That's how it should be. And so he's talented enough that he can defend off and hold off. And again, this is where, because he's given the lightsaber, Maz Kanata says that she sees something in his eyes. He gets a discussion about the Force as well. And he doesn't know much about it because, again, he's been brainwashed largely. He's seen Kylo, but doesn't know too much about it. And all he's seen Kylo do is be evil. And so he's like, no, thank you. But when he had to defend, he defends with a lightsaber. And because they have riot batons that are more similar to a lightsaber, he's able to do it. And you see his skill and abilities on its own. Now, of course, again, I'm saying that he is a Jedi, so he has a Force, so he's able to do things even better than those. But he doesn't realize it. He's not acting upon it. But he fights them off. He holds them, but he doesn't ever kill them. He holds them off. Once he gets somebody off balance, he'll like elbow them in the back of the head and try to knock them down. And the whole time he's trying to explain to his friends, look, we can't do this. You know, look, our friend died on Jakku. There's people dying constantly. Look around you. Like, we can't, like, what are we fighting for? We were taken from our families and all this stuff. So it begins to go through that. And then the resistance shows up and Rey's been taken. Now, Rey and him, neither one of them have parents. And so they've kind of made a deal with each other that let's go look for our parents together. He convinces Rey, like, look, you've been waiting around your whole life. Let's be proactive and let's search for them. So they both have a reason to go somewhere. And they have a connection between each other because they're trying to go out and search. So they get to the resistance and he wants to help Rey because he made a promise to her. And this is the first person that he's met after being in the resistance and being brainwashed. And she's similar to him. They're both searching for their family. And so he made a promise to her that they would help each other find their families. And so he wants to go and help Rey. But he says flat out when he's talking to Leia, he's like, look, I want to help you find, I made a promise to her and I want to help her, get free. So I know how to get on Starkiller Base. I know how to break in. I know how to do all these things. See, that's logic. He knows how to do all these things. He's not a janitor. He's actually a high level elite SEALs type fighter. And he says, but I'm not joining the resistance. I'm doing this to get Rey. You need to understand that the second we get back, we're leaving. I'm not joining you. And Leia's like, okay, well, that's great. I'll take whatever I can get right now. And so they go and head there. When they head there, you can have the fight as per normal. And he ends up getting hurt and cut up by Kylo. So then fast forward, and here's where we kind of get to a lot of the depth of why it would be so great for him to be the Jedi. So Episode 8, first off, you're not having pathetic coward Luke. You're having real Luke. He's a real Jedi Master with a school. You can say the reason he wasn't around when it was going on was because he was off training his students. And prior to that happening with The Force Awakens, that he was actually, there was no war going on at that point. But the second he sensed all of the deaths of the Millennium system, then that was when he rushed over and he came and he actually saved Rey and Finn from Kylo because he came to rescue them after the destruction of the Millennium system. And so now he has Rey and Finn, but we'll just discuss Finn. And he's talking with Finn, and Finn had to take some time to recover. And Finn saying, I don't want to join at all. I don't want to fight. I don't want to do any of this. And Luke begins to talk to him and say, well, explain to him what the Jedi Order is. And he says, I know about the Force. I've seen Kylo. And this is where we get an explanation where we can grow the philosophy, grow the mythos of Star Wars, and do so in a logical way. We want to see, we love, exposition in movies often kind of like, just added exposition, show, don't tell. But Star Wars, the mythos, we love those scenes with like Yoda explaining to Luke what's the Force. We always want to know more about what the Force is. And it's been 30 years. We realized that there were some issues with the prequels. It wasn't run perfectly. So what has Luke done? Luke, the most powerful Jedi now, what has he learned? So he begins to explain to Finn what it is that makes up the Jedi Order. What it is that to be a true peacekeeper. And he explains to him that they are peaceful. He explains to him how he destroyed the Emperor. And Finn had heard a story about this, and he heard the story, and he's kind of like, I know you killed the Emperor. And he's like, actually, no, I didn't. And he explains to Finn that the way he ended up winning was by tossing his lightsaber away. And this gets Finn to stay. It interests him. This is something he's never heard of. Obviously, he's probably been manipulated and lied to about what happened by the First Order. But because of the Force connection, the fact that Finn has the Force ability, they're on somewhere like Octu, that's a place very strong in the Force, he can begin to sense and feel that Luke's telling the truth. And so he begins to listen to him because he's intrigued by this powerful warrior that, toppled an entire galactic empire by tossing a lightsaber away. And this is where we get into it, where he begins to explain what's the philosophy of the Jedi. When is it time to fight and when is it time not to fight? How do they keep the peace when there's evil all around? And this is something that is going to be a conversation that Finn's going to want to get into very deeply. And it's going to make perfect sense for them to have these discussions as they move forward. Finn is also going to be somebody that's going to improve very quickly because he's had a lot of training prior. Now it's slightly different training, but he's used to training on a daily basis. He's used to moving forward, and he's got some experience with something similar to a lightsaber. And here's also where you can have the points of, after he wakes up out of a coma, you can have him struggling where there's times where he's learning so well. Because again, he's been brainwashed. He's spent his life being trained to take in information. But this kind of training again begins to cause issues, and he starts to relapse and have issues where he pops back into his First Order brainwashing. And Luke has to work on him, and he's torn between whether or not to use some Force abilities on his mind or allow Finn to work through it. So again, you've got so much conflict that you can go through here that's very natural and organic. And while it's going on, and it's explaining to the audience what's going on here, and at the same time, just for interest in the story as a whole, in episode 8 you would also have Snoke teaching Kylo and the Knights of Ren, because Kylo got tossed away by Luke. And there's a lot of other stuff that we can get into from that, but again, not this video. The other issue, though, that kind of keeps Finn from agreeing with it, because you might say, well, this sounds perfect. This doesn't be exactly what Finn wants to do, but what do the Jedi do? They take the kids when they're young and train them up, and this is where Finn begins to see that maybe he's being fooled. He was fooled his whole life, brainwashed his whole life. Is he just being brainwashed again? I don't like that kids are being taken in at a young age. And this is where we begin to see, has Luke come up with a new idea? What's the answer behind that? Why would they do this? How is he dealing with some of the struggles that led to someone like his father, Anakin, that came up from a young age, missed his mother, and this desire and longing and love led to him turning to the dark side? And this is where we can explain all these things. We can explain where we can go back and revisit and talk about what happened with the Jedi Order in the prequels. And then what's Luke found out about the Jedi Order for thousands of generations beforehand? What has he begun to place together and put together? And all these can be answered naturally, even more so than just a normal conversation with a student and a teacher, because a lot of the issues that people have with the Jedi Order, or a lot of the answers the Jedi Order have, or questions Finn would have. And then ultimately it could lead itself into Finn being the perfect example of someone to lead the Jedi Order after Luke. That Luke passes the baton or saber, to Finn. Because this is someone that spent his whole life training. He's been in training in schools and situations his entire life. He knows what works well. He knows how to structure and set up a plan or how to organize things. And he also understands, he's been around it. He's been the kid that was taken from his family. And so he's not going to be just taking everyone when they're not ready. He's going to understand kind of the emotions behind these kids. He's going to be respectful of them as they're growing up, but he's also a soldier, and he knows how to train and prepare people for these things. But as the leader of the Jedi Order after Luke, these are 10, 11, and 12, episodes 10, 11, and 12, he is still on the pacifist side because of what originally begun, where he started out with seeing that the death of the war was an issue. And so again, I just, that's kind of an outline. There's so much that you can get to, and it was hard to explain some other ideas that I had when I talked about that. I kind of pieced together a rough outline, kind of a possibility of an entire trilogy, and kind of even moving into 10, 11, and 12 without getting into so much backstory with Rey and Kylo and Luke and everything that's going on. So I was trying to keep it directly with Finn, but I just think the setup of him struggling with death and not wanting to kill fits perfectly with what the Jedi Order wants to be, as well as his training potential beforehand, and how he's not going to be a fan of the fact that they've got kids around, and is this brainwashing? And a lot of questions that would be very, very interesting to have Grand Master Luke Skywalker answering these questions and teaching up and getting to see him be this very hopeful father figure that we've always wanted to see, the wise old mage. Like, that would just be perfect. And I think the way Finn was set up, it set up perfectly to be the Jedi. His character, the story, the back, everything plays itself in. The story should be first. The story always comes first. And then the characters can be created as great as they can be possibly created. But if you place a character, like, there's better villains there's more dangerous villains, there's more powerful villains in the world. Infinity War's coming up. Thanos is more powerful than the Joker, but The Dark Knight was a vastly better movie than any movie could have been made with Batman versus Thanos, because the Joker was the perfect character for that story. And Finn is the perfect character for this story and for this place and time in Star Wars. And that's why I think that he should be the person to be the Jedi and continue the Jedi lineage on after this point. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, maybe some additions, maybe whether or not you want me to put in the work to try to put together this story. Just FYI, it will not happen soon. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to spend a lot of time on putting it together. But if that's something of interest, maybe I'll start working on it. If not, I'll put it to the side and touch it some other time when I've actually got the time to think about it. But I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts. Thank you as always for watching, and never forget, you nerf herders, I love you.